Welcome to the world of science fiction stories, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe my channel. Enjoy the listening. They waited for an army, but one ship changed everything. The alert sirens blared across the Hijin Central Command Station. Admiral Kang leaned forward in his chair, eyes fixed on the massive holographic display showing his fleet of 7,000 vessels arranged in perfect defensive formation. Status report, he demanded. Human vessels expected to emerge from hyperspace in 3 minutes, Admiral, reported Commander Lee. All defense systems are ready. The intelligence had been clear. After months of failed negotiations and rising tensions, the humans had finally committed to war. The Hageman spy network had intercepted communications indicating a massive fleet was en route to their homeworld. 2 minutes to emergence, announced Lee. Admiral Kang straightened his uniform. This would be the defining moment of his career, the day he defeated the upstart human race and cemented the human dominance for another 1,000 years. 1 minute. The bridge fell silent. 7,000 ships waited. Weapon systems hummed at full charge. Emergence detected. A small ripple appeared in the fabric of space. Admiral Kang leaned forward, expecting to see dozens, perhaps hundreds of warships pouring through. Instead, a single vessel emerged. "Where is the rest of their fleet?" Kang demanded. Commander Lee frantically checked her instruments. "There's nothing else, Admiral. Just the one ship." The vessel was sleek, smaller than their heavy cruisers, with strange angles that seemed to absorb rather than reflect light. It bore the insignia of the Human Space Service, the HS of Retribution. "We're receiving a transmission," said Lee, confusion evident in her voice. The main screen flickered to life, displaying a human female in a crisp black uniform adorned with silver pins. "This is Captain Park of the HS of Retribution. I request immediate diplomatic parley with the Hegemony Council." Admiral Kang stared in disbelief. They had expected an army, but a single human ship showed up. The command center erupted in whispers. Kang raised his hand for silence. "Is this some kind of trick?" he asked, turning to his intelligence officer. Officer Sun shook his head. "Our scans detect no other ships in the vicinity, Admiral. No unusual energy signatures that might indicate cloaked vessels." Kang studied the image of the human captain on the screen. Her face showed no fear, only calm determination. This made no sense. The humans knew the Hegman's military strength. To send a lone ship was beyond foolish. It was suicidal. "Put me through," Kang ordered. The communication officer nodded. "Captain Park," Kang spoke, keeping his voice steady. "This is Admiral Kang of the Hegman Defense Force. Your request for parley is unexpected." "But not unwelcome, I hope," replied Park with a slight smile. "The matters we need to discuss are of the utmost importance to both our peoples. Where is the human fleet?" Kang asked directly. "Our intelligence indicated a substantial force." "I am the human fleet, Admiral," Park said simply. Laughter rippled through the command center before Kang silenced it with a glare. "You expect me to believe Earth sent a single ship to confront the might of the Hegemony?" "I don't expect you to believe anything without evidence," Park replied, "which is why I request an audience with the Council. Some things must be seen to be understood." Kang muted the transmission and turned to his advisors. "Opinions?" "It's clearly a trap," said Commander Lee. "The humans must have developed some new stealth technology. Their fleet could be all around us." "Our sensors would detect something," countered Officer Sun. "No cloaking technology is perfect." "Maybe they're buying time," suggested another officer, "delaying while their real fleet assembles elsewhere." Kang considered these possibilities. None seemed entirely satisfactory. He unmuted the transmission. "Captain Park, you arrive in Hegemony space uninvited, in what our government has declared a state of war, and expect diplomatic treatment." "Admiral," Park replied, "if war was our intention, we wouldn't be having this conversation. The HSS Retribution comes with the authority to negotiate terms that would benefit both humanity and the hegemony." "One ship cannot dictate terms to the hegemony," Kang said firmly. Park's expression remained unchanged. "With respect, Admiral, you don't yet understand what one ship can do." There was something in her tone that gave Kang pause. Not a threat exactly, but an absolute certainty that sent a chill down his spine. "You have 1 hour to present your case to me," Kang decided. "Then I will determine if this matter warrants the Council's attention." "Thank you, Admiral. I look forward to our meeting." The transmission ended, leaving the command center in stunned silence. "Order a detailed scan of that vessel," Kang commanded. "I want to know everything about it. power readings, weapon systems, unusual technology, and maintain battle readiness. As his crew rushed to obey, Kang studied the image of the lone human ship floating against the backdrop of stars. It seemed almost fragile compared to the massive hegemony warships surrounding it. "What game are you playing, Captain Park?" he muttered. An hour later, Kang sat in his private conference room. The door slid open, and two security officers escorted Captain Park inside. In person, she was shorter than he expected, but carried herself with unmistakable authority. "Captain." Kang greeted her with a formal nod. "Admiral," she returned the gesture. "Thank you for agreeing to meet." "I'm curious," Kang admitted as they sat down. "Our scans show your ship is armed but not heavily. You carry no planet-destroying weapons, no massive arsenal, yet you face the combined might of the hegemony without apparent concern." "Not all power is measured in firepower, Admiral." "Then how is it measured, Captain?" Park placed a small device on the table between them. It projected a hologram of a star system. "3 days ago, we placed quantum observation devices throughout your system," she explained. "They're undetectable by your technology." Kang's expression darkened. "Spying is hardly a basis for negotiation." "Not spying," Park corrected. "Insurance." She touched the device, and the hologram changed to show what looked like technical schematics. "These devices can alter the quantum state of matter within a defined radius," Park continued. "A demonstration might help you understand." She gestured to her security escort. "May I?" After a nod from Kang, the officer handed her a metal cup from a nearby table. Park placed it beside the hologram device and pressed a sequence. The cup shimmered for a brief moment, then collapsed in on itself, leaving only a fine dust on the table. Kang couldn't hide his shock. "What did you do?" "Changed the quantum binding properties of the metal," Park explained calmly. "The devices throughout your system can do this on a planetary scale." Silence filled the room as the implication sank in. "This is why one ship is sufficient, Admiral. The HS Retribution doesn't need to outgun your fleet. We simply need to deliver our message. War between our peoples would result in mutual destruction." Kang stared at the dust that had once been a solid metal cup. "The Council will see you now, Captain Park," he said quietly. "Sometimes the greatest strength comes not from having the largest army, but from changing the rules of engagement entirely." Captain Hannah Park stood alone in her quarters aboard the Retribution, staring at her reflection in the small mirror. Dark circles underlined her eyes, the result of too many sleepless nights since receiving her orders. "Computer, play back Earth Command's final transmission," she said. The holographic display flickered to life, showing General Kim's stern face. "Captain Park, the situation has deteriorated beyond peaceful resolution. The hegemony will not recognize our independence, and our intelligence indicates they're preparing for a full-scale invasion. We cannot match their numbers in conventional warfare." She mouthed the words along with the recording, having memorized them over countless viewings. "The Retribution is our only hope. Project Sunburst is now operational. You are to proceed alone to the hegemony homeworld and convince them that further aggression would be unwise." The message ended as it always did, with the general's grim expression and final words. "The fate of humanity rests with you, Captain. Good luck." A soft chime interrupted her thoughts. "Captain, the hegemony representatives have arrived in the communication chamber," announced Lieutenant Han. Park straightened her uniform. "Very well. Let's see if they're willing to listen to reason." The communication chamber filled with the holographic projection of 3 hegemony officials, their tall, spindly forms towering over her. "This is highly irregular," stated the central figure. "I am High Counselor Jin. Explain the meaning of this solitary incursion." "High Counselor," Park replied with a formal bow, "I come representing the United Governments of Earth and her colonies. I'm authorized to negotiate terms that will prevent unnecessary bloodshed." "Negotiate?" Jin's translator conveyed his incredulity. "With one ship, perhaps humans do not understand the concept of war." Captain Park allowed herself a small smile. "I believe it's the hegemony that has misunderstood. Allow me to clarify our position." After the communication ended, Park returned to her quarters. Her hands trembled slightly as she poured herself a glass of water. The weight of her mission pressed down on her shoulders like a physical burden. Lieutenant Han knocked on her door. "Captain, do you have a moment?" "Enter," she called. Han stepped inside, holding a datapad. At 32, he was 5 years younger than Park, but his eyes held the same wariness. The Hegemony Council has agreed to formal talks tomorrow, he reported. They're still scanning us continuously. Let them scan, Park replied. They won't find anything they can understand. Han nodded but didn't leave. The crew was asking questions, Captain. They know we're the only ship facing thousands. They're wondering if this is a suicide mission. Park finished for him. Yes. Park turned to look at the small window showing the vast Hegemony fleet surrounding them. Tell them the truth, Han. Our mission is to prevent a war, not start one. But if we fail, I understand, Han said quietly. After he left, Park opened a hidden compartment in her desk. Inside was a small black cube, the control key for Project Sunburst. She turned it over in her hands, feeling its smooth surface. In the mess hall, the small crew of 15 gathered for their evening meal. They were an elite group, chosen specifically for this mission. Each was the best in their field, and each had volunteered knowing they might never return. Medical Officer Bay looked up as Han entered. Any news, Lieutenant? Formal talks tomorrow, Han replied, filling his tray. The captain says to tell you all the truth of our situation. Engineer Choi snorted. The truth? We're sitting in a prototype vessel with experimental tech that might not even work, surrounded by the most powerful military force in known space. The tech will work, said Science Officer Yan firmly. I helped design it. And if it doesn't, ask Security Chief Du. Han sat down with his tray. Then we saved Earth the cost of sending the entire fleet to their deaths. The room fell silent as they considered this. To impossible odds, Weapons Officer Men finally said, raising his cup in a toast. The others joined in. To impossible odds. In her ready room, Park reviewed the files on the Hegman Council members. High Counselor Jin was known as a moderate, but the military faction led by Supreme Commander Nam had been pushing for aggressive expansion. The resource-rich human colonies were tempting targets. A gentle ping from her computer indicated an incoming message, this one encrypted on a channel only she could access. Park entered her authorization code. The face that appeared wasn't General Kim, but President Sversel. Captain Park, the president said, her voice low. This message will delete itself after viewing. There's something you need to know about Project Sunburst. Park listened intently, her expression growing more serious with each word. I understand, Madam President, she said when the message ended. The screen went dark. Park sat in silence for several minutes, then pressed the intercom. Han, please assemble the senior staff in the briefing room. 5 minutes later, Park faced her 5 most trusted officers. Tomorrow's meeting will determine whether humanity has a future, she began. But there's something you need to know about our mission. The officers exchanged glances. Project Sunburst isn't just a defensive technology, Park continued. It's the result of decades of research into quantum manipulation. If deployed, it wouldn't just destroy the hegemony. It would create a cascade effect that could potentially destabilize space-time throughout this entire sector. Shocked silence followed her words. So if we use it, Science Officer Yan began, we might save Earth from invasion, but at the cost of unknown consequences to the fabric of space itself. Park finished. It's a last resort that we cannot actually resort to. Then tomorrow? Han started. Tomorrow, we bluff, Park said simply. We convince the hegemony that we can and will use this weapon if pushed, while doing everything in our power to ensure we never have to. A bluff. Security Chief Du looked skeptical. Against beings who have mastered interstellar travel and warfare for thousands of years. Precisely because they have mastered warfare, Park replied. They understand mutually assured destruction. They'll believe we would use such a weapon because it's what they would do in our position. And if they call our bluff, asked Weapons Officer Men. Park's expression hardened. Then humanity will be remembered as a species that faced extinction with dignity. But I don't intend to let that happen. The next morning, Captain Park stood before the holographic projections of the Hegemony Council, 12 alien beings representing the most powerful empire in known space. High Counselor Jin spoke first. Captain Park, you claim to speak for all humanity, yet you bring one ship to what could be the last meeting between our peoples. Park stood tall despite her fatigue. Sometimes, Counselor, one is all that's needed. Explain yourself, demanded Supreme Commander Nam, his translator barely masking his hostility. Humanity has always had to adapt to survive, Park began. Outmatched and outnumbered, we learned to think differently. Your civilization measures power in fleet size and territorial control. We measure it in innovation. She activated a holographic display showing the quantum device. What I'm about to show you will change everything you think you know about power in this galaxy. The council members leaned forward, expressions ranging from skepticism to curiosity. In that moment, Hannah Park carried not just the fate of humanity on her shoulders, but perhaps the fate of the galaxy itself. This is absurd, Admiral Kang hissed to his subordinates as they watched the lone human vessel from the bridge of his flagship. They send one ship and expect us to negotiate. The communication console chimed. Captain Park is requesting a demonstration zone in the uninhabited DO system, reported Commander Lee. A demonstration of what? She wouldn't specify, Admiral. Kang considered for a moment. Very well. Grant her request. Send a surveillance detachment to observe whatever foolishness they plan. 3 hours later, Kang and the Hegemony High Council watched the feed from the DO system. The Retribution positioned itself near a small uninhabited moon. What could they possibly? Began Counselor Jin. The transmission briefly distorted. When it cleared, the moon was gone. In its place was a swirling vortex of light and matter that collapsed upon itself in seconds. Silence fell across the command center. Analysis. Kang finally managed. The human vessel deployed some form of device that created a temporary artificial singularity, said Science Officer Yun, her voice shaking. The gravitational distortion completely consumed the moon before the effect dissipated. The screen flickered as Captain Park's face appeared. The HSS Retribution carries 12 such devices, she stated calmly, each one calibrated to target major hegemony worlds. We call it Project Sunburst. She let the statement hang in the air before continuing. Shall we discuss those terms now? The silence in the command center was absolute. The alien officials stared at the screen, their expressions ranging from shock to disbelief to fear. Supreme Commander Nam was the first to recover. This is a trick, he declared. Some kind of visual deception. Science Officer Yun shook her head, her fingers moving rapidly over her control panel. The readings are real, Commander. The moon had a mass of approximately 8.3 trillion tons. It's simply gone. High Counselor Jin turned to Admiral Kang. Is this possible? Could one small ship carry such power? Before Kang could answer, Captain Park spoke again. I understand your skepticism, she said. In your position, I might feel the same. Perhaps another demonstration would help. No, several voices shouted at once. That won't be necessary, said Jin, regaining his composure. We've seen enough. Park nodded. The choice before you is simple. The hegemony can continue its planned aggression against human worlds, in which case we will be forced to deploy our sunburst devices, or we can establish new terms for peaceful coexistence. You would destroy yourselves as well, said Nam. Such weapons would create chain reactions affecting nearby systems, including your own. A slight smile appeared on Park's face. We've calculated those risks. Have you? On board the Retribution, Lieutenant Han stood just off camera, watching the exchange. When the transmission ended, he approached Captain Park. They're frightened, he observed. Good, Park replied. Fear can be a powerful motivator for peace. The device worked better than expected, said Science Officer Yan, joining them. The quantum collapse was complete. Not even dust remained. Park nodded. And the other 11 devices? Yan hesitated. Captain, as you know, we only have 3 functional devices. The others are empty shells. The hegemony doesn't need to know that, Park said quietly. Back in the Hegemony Command Center, a heated debate was underway. We should strike now, before they can deploy more of these weapons, insisted Nam. Our combined fleet can destroy 1 ship, no matter how advanced. And risk 12 of our worlds? Countered Trade Minister Ju. The human colonies aren't worth such a price. If they even have 12 devices, said Nam. This could be a bluff. Do you want to take that chance? Asked Jin. Even one such device deployed against our home world would be catastrophic. Admiral Kang had been quiet, studying the sensor data from the demonstration. He looked up. There's something else we should consider. The energy readings from the human ship during the demonstration were unusual. Explain, demanded Jin. The power surge was massive, yes, but brief. And immediately afterward, the ship's energy levels dropped significantly. It's as if, he paused. As if what, Admiral? Jin prompted. As if the deployment taxes their systems severely. They may need time to recover before they could use another device. Nam's eyes gleamed. Then we attack now, while they're vulnerable. Or, said Jin, we use this time to negotiate. Find out what they truly want. I agree with the High Counselor, said Kang. We should at least hear their terms. Nam scoffed. Since when does the mighty hegemony bow to threats from lesser species? Since that lesser species demonstrated the ability to destroy our worlds, Jin replied firmly. The debate continued as the hegemony leaders tried to process this new reality. Meanwhile, a small scout ship moved silently through the dew system, investigating the site of the vanished moon. Captain Bai of scout vessel Harmony transmitted his findings directly to Admiral Kang's private channel. Admiral, I've completed my scans of the demonstration site. There's something you should know. Kang excused himself from the council meeting and moved to a private room. Report, Captain. The singularity didn't just consume the moon, sir. It created a permanent distortion in space-time, small but measurable. If such a weapon were used on an inhabited world, the effects would be far worse. Potentially catastrophic, Kang finished grimly. Yes, sir. And there's more. The human device appears to have left traces of exotic particles that are continuing to react with normal matter. In simple terms, it's as if they've created a wound in space that isn't healing properly. Kang's expression darkened. Keep this information confidential, Captain. Continue your scans and report any changes. When Kang returned to the council chamber, the debate was still raging. We've received a formal request from Captain Park, announced Communications Officer Gill. She's asking for our response to her offer of negotiations within the next 6 hours. After that, she says the retribution will consider our silence as rejection and act accordingly. Jin looked at the assembled leaders. We need to decide now. Nam stood. I say we attack. One ship cannot stand against our fleet, no matter what weapons it carries. Trade Minister Ju shook her head. The risk is too great. I'd vote we negotiate. One by one, the council members voiced their opinions.